Okay, so I'm starting off with some glass eyes for this doll, and they're little blank cabochons which I'm going to be painting in a black colour. And I'm just using some water-based acrylic paint for this one. I'm going to let this first layer dry, and then I'm going to go in with my brown and do the iris colour for this one. Now I'm going to leave that to dry pretty much overnight to make sure it's all nice and dry before I put it in the pug's head. So for sculpting, I'm starting off with an aluminium foil core, and that basically acts as like a skull. This stays in the doll once it's been baked. For a number of reasons, you don't want to do polymer clay too thick because the heat can't penetrate it and it won't bake. And it's also about weight as well. So the more polymer clay you use, the heavier the doll is. So I'm just going to do a really rough coverage of the polymer clay to begin with. So this head took about a block and a bit of Sculpting Original. So that's the white Sculpey. I like to use softer Sculpey, so this one's quite soft. And I'm just covering the head with some clay first. Then I can start really roughing out the shape of the pug's head. So this one was a really interesting one to sculpt because I have to sculpt in the wrinkles as well. And then I had a sort of little process that I was going to try where I was going to put the fabric inside of the wrinkles to get that wrinkling effect with the faux fur. So yeah, I'm just pretty much mapping out the shape of the head first to begin with. And obviously pugs need to have a bit of a flat face. So yeah, it's a really interesting one to sculpt. Next, I'm going to start by sculpting the nose, a really rough nose shape, and then I'm going to put it on top of the head and sculpt around it. So it's going to be like the starting point of the details. So just basically really roughly carving out the shape of the nose to begin with. So when I place it on the head, I kind of want to have it pushed up a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of clay behind it just to push it up, not too much. But essentially I do want it laying flat because their face is a little bit upturned where the nose is. So just placing it, and then I'm going to sculpt around it and add the details around it. Alright, so now for the eye area. So I'm basically doing the same process I do with all my dolls when I sculpt things. Because I'm using a flat back capuchon, I need to sort of create a little eye well or an eye socket, so the capuchon has somewhere to sit and I can push it up so it is in the right angle. So I just basically rolled out 2 lumps of clay and placed them on top of the head. Alright, so once I'm happy with the way everything's looking, I'm going to put the eyes on the little eye sockets and sort of rotate the head to make sure they're all symmetrical, they're sitting the right way, even though Pug's eyes aren't symmetrical. But yeah, just want to make sure they're sitting on there correctly before I start working on the little eyelids. So I roll out a piece of clay into a worm shape and I'm basically doing the tear line or the eye line for this one. Waterline, I should say, third time lucky, and just playing around with the eyelids to make sure I'm getting a look that I like. Then I've moved on to doing the jaw, I guess you could call it, and sort of the muzzle area. So just basically rolled out bits of clay roughly the same size to just build up that lower jaw a little bit and blend that in, and then I can go ahead and do the muzzle flaps on both of them. So again, rolled out 2 pieces of clay the same size and shaped them roughly the same size so I can place them on top and sort of blend it in a little bit, and I'll end up doing some more refining once I've got more things on the doll, on the sculpture. And I can start building up the brow line now as well. So I've rolled out 2 larger bits of clay into like a snake, which I can then build on the brow line. And this is where I'm going to start putting some wrinkling detail in. The wrinkles are going to be deeper than what they normally are, just because I want to get that faux fur in the wells. Now for the nose wrinkle, I'm sort of experimenting with this process a little bit. So I've rolled out a larger bit of clay and I'm just placing it on top of the nose area, and I'm sort of going to blend it in a little bit but still keeping the wrinkling effect, just sort of carving it out a little bit but and blending it in a little bit as well. So it's just a bit of an experiment because I haven't really sculpted many wrinkles before, so I haven't sculpted a pug before, so yeah, a little bit of an interesting process and always good to learn new things as well. Right, and doing some more wrinkling on the brow line as well. So just building that up with some bigger rolled out pieces of clay. Mainly starting off with the middle bit, and then I'll do some more wrinkles off to the side and then sort of blend them out and carve them out a little bit. And then I can build up the shape of the head a little bit more on the side once I've put those wrinkles in place. For the ears, I've just rolled out 2 bits of clay and really roughly shaped them into a pug-shaped ear. And then I can start attaching them to the head. So I want them to be the same size. So that's why I roll the 2 balls of clay out roughly the same size. And try and shape them at the same time too, so they both look similar, I guess, sisters. And yeah, so I can attach it to the head for these ones. So these ones are quite thin. I'm going to be putting a layer of fabric over the top of them, so that reinforces them a little bit. And then, yeah, so I don't need to worry about them breaking because I'm going to be putting the fabric over the top of it. So I've just curled one end over, and then I can start. I'll attach it a little bit more to the back of the head as well. But essentially, I want to put them in the same places so they look symmetrical. So I sort of mark out where they sit normally on a pug's head. I have reference images on my computer next to me, so I've done little markings on the face so I know where they sit directly, across from the eye and across from the jaw. So once I'm happy with the way everything's looking, it's looking quite good at the moment, so I'm going to start carving out those deeper valleys where I want the wrinkles to go. So I've got a little loop tool that I'm using to carve out that extra clay. So the fabric has somewhere to go and I have somewhere to curl it to make those wrinkles from the faux fur. And then I can start adding a little bit of fur texture. I add it just basically around the eyes, the nose area. A lot of it's going to be covered in faux fur, so I'm not going too overboard in this, but yeah, just a little bit of fur detail. Alright, once I'm happy with that, I can start working on the feet. So same deal as all my other feet. I roll out 4 bits of clay, the same size, so I know that I have the same amount of clay in every foot. I then start adding, sort of shaping it into a foot shape, and then add the toes individually and the nails finally. So obviously dogs don't have retractable nails, so their nails need to be a bit more pronounced. So yeah, I basically am pretty good at sculpting feet these days, or paws these days. I do a lot of them. They're all very similar, so I have a process pretty much down pat. And I find adding the toes individually is a lot quicker to do rather than carving them out of a piece of clay. And that way, because I've rolled out all of the balls the same size, it turns out the same size as well. So you don't have to worry about it turning out sort of too big or too small. So I find it this way is a lot easier than carving it out. And same for the little paw pads. Roll out bits of clay all the same size for each foot, and just basically sculpt out the shapes and then place them on. It's the toe pads are really easy. You just sort of shape it into a little oval and then press it down. It creates a really good, really easy toe pad. And once everything is baked, I can start painting all of the pieces that need to be painted. So I'm just painting the paw pads of this one, just in a black, not too overboard, because I'm using a cream coloured faux fur, so I'm not going to paint the whole thing black. And just parts of the face, then I'm going to be painting black as well, so the nose area, the muzzle area, and the ears. I'm just going to paint it in a bit black around the eyes as well. And I'm using some water-based acrylic paint by the brand Acryl. It's not a very expensive paint, but I like the consistency of it and the pigments, so you can find something very similar in your local craft store. Alright, once I've painted everything up, I can start attaching the armature. So this armature is my biggest armature because it's quite a big doll. So it is my 3/4, I think it is 3/4 sized armature piece. It's a ball socket armature, and you do need some pliers to click all the sockets in place. So I've measured everything out, all of the pieces that are on the legs, and the tail's not going to have any armature in it because it's a little curly tail. So I'm going to pop it all together, and then I can start needle felting the body. So for needle felting the body, also I should say first, I do have these armatures in my shop as well. If you are interested in that, check it out. I have reels. I am all out of most of the pliers apart from this size pliers, so check that out there, and you might be able to work with something with this size. Okay, so once I've put the armature together, I can start working on the body. So I'm wrapping the armature in some pipe cleaner, which will sort of act as like a catch for the polyfill. So the polyfill is like a cushion stuffing which I use to needle felt the body, so I create a muscle tone before I sew the faux fur on. So yeah, it's a really cheap alternative to not struggle with your polyfill. So moving on with my needle felting, so I basically do a rough layer of the polyfill around the armature this time, so I can start building up on the muscle tone. And I basically use just a single needle felting needle, and I don't have to be too particular about the way everything. I don't have to add much detail basically because I'm going to be covering it in faux fur anyway, so I just add really basic muscle tone to this one. I used quite a lot of polyfill through this one because it was a bigger doll, so I reckon about half a kilo of a bag. So yeah, it always takes a little bit longer to do the polyfill, but I think it's well worth it when you can refine the piece a little bit better. So it's a good alternative to using alpaca fibre, which is quite expensive and sometimes hard to get. So yeah, a little tip, polyfill works really great. So once I've finished the needle felting on the body, I can start adding the faux fur. So I found a really perfect faux fur for the pug. It's the perfect colour, the cream colour, perfect length. So it works really well for this one, and I'm pretty sure I had it in stock. So I'm just going to do a little bit of wrinkling work with this fabric as well. So I basically start off with the torso piece, pin that together, trim it to size, sew it up with a lattice stitch, and then I can start working on the limbs, the tail and the neck area. But for this one, I'm going to be pinning a couple of wrinkles into it and then doing a little blind stitch to sew those wrinkles, make them permanent. So I'm just sort of bunching up the fabric here, and then yeah, I'll do a little blind stitch and then sew the torso piece together. So just a little experiment on how to do some wrinkles, and I think it worked really well. You can see the wrinkling sort of, worked really well. So I'm quite happy with the way that looked. So definitely on the agenda to do more wrinkly things. Okay, so I can just start trimming off the excess. I just basically trim around the leg area before I attach these parts, just so I can pin it together and just conform the fabric a bit. Yeah, and then just trim all the excess off and sew everything up using a lattice stitch. You do want a good quality thread as well, because you need a bit of tension on the thread when you're doing the lattice stitch, just to make sure the seam is closed. So this part always takes the longest for me. I'm not a big fan of hand sewing or sewing in general, but yeah, obviously an integral part of making art dolls. Okay, so for the tail, I've basically just I'm going to sew a little tube together and then curl it around on itself and put a stitch in the end just to close it shut, and then I'll end up sewing it on the back of the body. So yeah, nice little curly tail for the pug. So once that's done, I can glue everything together. I've sewed the leg pieces up, everything's been sewn. I can glue it all together using some tacky fabric glue. This is just from my local craft store Spotlight. It's just a clear, really thick tacky glue for fabric. Once it's done, I can apply some of the fabric over the head. So I had a little play around with some black fabric and this cream coloured one, and sort of pressed them into the values that I sculpted at the start. And it worked really well. I'm really happy the way that turned out. I also added some faux fur to the feet, just to finish it off, obviously. I added a little bit of colouring, but that's pretty much it. For some reason I don't have any footage of the face, I don't know, maybe I lost it. Not too sure what's happened to that, but anyway, so that's pretty much it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that stuff, and leave a comment. It helps my channel grow. I do want to focus a little bit more this year on growing my channel a little bit, and for any commission info, just send me a message at creaturesofnat.com. I have heaps of dolls up there. Payment plans are also welcome, so just ask me how they work. I'm happy to have a little chat. But anyway, you can find me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all those socials at Creatures of Nat, and Patreon as well for a little bit more. Anyway, I will catch you in the next one, and hope you like the little pug. Bye.